Number 24, penny plunderer. Ever wonder if a criminal could be so dedicated to a bit that they actually lose money while committing a crime? Meet Joe Coyne. Yes, that's literally his name. A man whose entire personality is defined by the lowest possible denomination of legal tender. After getting canned for pinching pennies, Joe decided that copper was his calling, leading to a spree of robberies where he ignores stacks of $100 bills to secure a heavy sack of 1-cent coins. His tactical genius involved throwing rolls of pennies at people, which is basically just giving your victim a very small, hard to spend tip for their trouble. He sits at the bottom of our list because he has no powers, no real muscle, and a weapon that is less dangerous than a moderately aggressive toddler with a handful of gravel. On top of that, his loot is so heavy and worthless that he probably spends more on getaway gas than he actually steals. Number 23, The Wall. Getting flattened by a construction project is usually a tragedy, but for Joshua Waldmeyer, it was a very strange career pivot. During a freak explosion at a job site, a literal brick wall fell on this guy and decided to merge with his DNA instead of just ending his story. Now he's a walking, sentient slab of masonry with human legs and a face that looks like it was carved by a very confused mason. He beats the penny plunderer because he is fundamentally a heavy object. You cannot exactly knock out a guy who's made of mortar and clay. What makes it even crazier is that his only real move is just leaning forward and hoping his opponent doesn't slightly step to the left. He is slow, clunky, and probably has a terrible time trying to find a shirt that fits his rectangular lifestyle. He's the only villain on this list who could be defeated by a very determined group of neighborhood teenagers with some spray paint. Number 22, Condiment King. If you ever felt like your hot dog was attacking you, Mitchell Mayo might be the reason for your traumatic lunch experience. This guy is a living parody of the Campy 60s, wearing a suit that looks like a discarded mustard packet and wielding dual-wielded sauce guns. While most Gotham criminals use fear or poison, Mitchell uses ketchup, vinegar, and the occasional squirt of spicy horseradish to ruin everyone's dry cleaning bills. I'm ranking higher than the Brickman because he actually has range and can cause some serious ocular discomfort as a well-timed blast of French's. Beyond that, he could technically trigger a nut allergy if he gets creative with his dipping sauces, which is a weirdly specific way to go out. He's a total joke, but getting blinded by vinegar is objectively worse than being chased by a slow-moving garden wall. I guess you could say his criminal record's the only thing more stained than his victim's shirts. Number 21, Typeface. Some people handle getting fired by updating their resumes, but Gordon Thomas handled it by gluing giant metal letters to his forehead. After losing his job as a signsmith, Gordon transformed into Typeface, a villain who fights Spider-Man by using the power of the alphabet with a very aggressive font choice. He doesn't have super strength, but he does have sharpened metal letters that he hurls with surprising accuracy, making him a walking Scrabble nightmare. He ranks above the Condiment King because a flying giant A made of steel will cause a lot more damage than a squirt of relish. He also has some actual brawling skills, having managed to survive a few rounds with a superhero without immediately slipping on his own supplies. It's hard to take a guy seriously when he's literally screaming in Helvetia, but those sharp vowels are surprisingly effective in a street fight. He's the only man in history who can literally give you a D in physical education and then send you to the hospital. Number 20, The Eraser. Imagine being so embarrassed by your college mistakes that you decide to dress up as a giant yellow number 2 pencil. Lenny Fiasco was Bruce Wayne's classmate, and after a life of being mocked, he built a suit that can erase evidence without a special chemical compound in his helmet. He looks like a piece of stationery that gained sentience, but he is actually a highly efficient cleaner for the mob who removes fingerprints and footprints. I have him over Typeface because he carries razor-sharp blades in his shoes and can emit sleeping gas from his giant eraser head. While throwing letters is flashy, the eraser has actual utility and stealth, making him a genuine threat to any crime scene investigator. He's basically a walking office supply store that can also slice your shins and put you to sleep with toxic fumes. It's a shame he can't erase the memory of anyone who actually saw him wearing that ridiculous yellow tube. Number 19, Asbestos Lady. Victoria Murdoch had a very simple plan to beat the Human Torch, which involved wearing a material that we now know is a health inspector's nightmare. Back in the 40s, she thought wrapping herself in asbestos was a brilliant tactical move, not realizing she was basically wearing a slow-motion poison suit. She carries a flamethrower and shoots asbestos bullets, making her a walking fire hazard, who is also a biological risk to everyone in a 10-mile radius. She beats the eraser because fire is a massive upgrade over a pencil suit, and her gear makes her essentially immune to being burned alive. The dark irony is that her superpower was actually a death sentence, turning her criminal career into a very tragic race against a medical diagnosis. She was a pioneer in the field of dangerous fashion, even if her choice of fabric was technically a war crime. Number 18, the Beard Hunter. Ernest Franklin is a man who took his inability to grow facial hair and turned it into a deeply disturbing hobby. This Doom Patrol villain is a muscle-bound assassin who specifically targets men with beards, scalping their facial hair to add to his bizarre trophy collection. Weird kink, but okay. He doesn't have powers, but he is a peak human athlete with a beard sense that allows him to track his whiskered prey across entire cities. He ranks above Asbestos Lady because he's a trained tactical killer who doesn't rely on a clunky suit or flammable chemicals. While she's fumbling with a flamethrower, Ernest is closing the distance with knives and firearms, fueled by pure hairless rage. He's a legitimate physical threat who happens to have the most pathetic motivation in the history of comic book assassinations. He is basically what happens when a gym rat spends too much time on a subreddit about grooming. If you're a man in this universe, the safest thing you could do for your life is buy a very high quality razor. Number 17, Codpiece. Sometimes a villain's design is so aggressively over the top that you have to wonder what the artist was going through that day. Codpiece became a criminal because he had a massive insecurity about his, so he built a multifunctional weapon system and strapped it directly to his, This mechanical nightmare features a missile launcher, a drill, and even a spring-loaded boxing glove, all protruding from his lower torso. He ranks above the Beard Hunter because, despite the sheer absurdity of his outfit, he's essentially a walking tank with heavy artillery. One well-trained crotch missile is going to beat a guy with a knife every single time, regardless of how much that guy hates beards. He's a walking HR violation who can also level a building, which I think makes him one of the most dangerous jokes on this entire list. That's why you have to respect a man who could blow up a bank and look like a total weirdo simultaneously. Number 16, the Matador. Manuel Eloganto was a disgraced bullfighter who decided that if he couldn't stab bulls anymore, he'd just start stabbing superheroes instead. He wears a traditional bullfighting outfit and uses a red cape to confuse his enemies, which surprisingly works on people like Daredevil and Spider-Man. He doesn't have any powers, but his agility and mastery of misdirection allow him to dance around opponents while looking for an opening with his sword. I'm betting he could beat Codpiece because a giant crotch cannon is incredibly clunky and hard to aim against a master of movement. The Matador is an expert at using his opponent's momentum against them, meaning Codpiece would likely blow off his own legs while Manuel gracefully sidesteps. He might look like he's headed to a very specific theme party, but his blade is sharp and his footwork is genuinely top tier. It's just lucky for him that none of the heroes have ever thought to just bring a gun to a cape fight. Number 15, Crazy Quilt. If you think a villain whose name sounds like a grandmother's sewing project's harmless, you clearly haven't met Paul Decker. After a botched surgery that left him blind to everything except bright flashing colors, Paul became a criminal who uses a high-tech helmet to weaponize light. Honestly, that makes sense. He wears a patchwork suit of garish colors that would make a fashion designer faint, but his helmet can emit hypnotic patterns and lethal laser beams. He beats the Matador because you can't sidestep a beam of light or a hypnic frequency that attacks your brain directly. While the Matador is trying to wave a cape, Crazy Quilt is turning the entire room into a lethal strobe light show that causes instant seizures. He is a walking sensory overload who can blind you or take over your mind before you even notice how bad his outfit is. Out of all the criminals in the world, he's the only one who could give you a concussion and a migraine at the exact same time. Number 14, Kite Man. Chuck Brown's a man who looked at a high-tech weaponry of Gotham City and decided his best bet was a large piece of nylon and a string. Kite Man is a cult favorite who uses a giant kite to fly around, dropping bombs and using specialized kites to trap his enemies. The joke is that his entire gimmick depends on the weather being slightly breezy, but he's actually a surprisingly effective aerial combatant. He ranks higher than the Crazy Quilt because his flight is a massive tactical advantage that allows him to attack from outside the range of a helmet. He can stay several hundred feet in the air and rain down explosives while Crazy Quilt is stuck on the ground trying to find a target. He's a guy with a toy, sure, but that toy allows him to bypass most security systems and drop rocks on your head. Hell yeah, nothing says supervillain like being defeated by a particularly tall tree or a lack of wind. Number 13, Calendar Man. Julian Day is a man who is so obsessed with his planner that he refuses to commit a crime unless it aligns with a national holiday. While he started out wearing a cape made of calendar pages, he eventually evolved into a brilliant Hannibal Lecter-style mastermind who plans his crimes months in advance. He ranks above Kite Man because his genius-level intellect allows him to manipulate the environment and predict exactly what his enemies will do. While Kite Man is just a guy on a glider, Calendar Man is a strategist who builds complex traps and seasonal weapons that are impossible to escape. He uses the theme of time to his advantage, ensuring that his crimes are as symbolic as they are destructive. He might be a slave to the Gregorian calendar, but his ability to outthink his opponents makes him a top-tier threat. He's basically the only person who is more stressed out than a leap year than a software engineer from the 90s. Number 12, the Kangaroo. Frank Oliver spent so much time living with kangaroos in Australia that he actually learned how to jump like them, which I think is a very weird way to spend a gap year. He eventually had legs surgically enhanced with springs, allowing him to leap over buildings and deliver kicks that could crack solid concrete. He's beating Calendar Man because in a physical, direct confrontation, raw power and speed usually wins over a guy who's good at scheduling. The kangaroo is a low-level superhuman who could bound across New York City and box with Spider-Man using his powerful legs. He looks ridiculous hopping around in a brown jumpsuit, but getting hit by his feet is like being struck by a high-speed vehicle. He's proof that you don't need a high IQ if you can just jump high enough to kick your problems in the face. I guess his career really took off, even if his dignity stayed firm on the ground. Number 11, Leapfrog. Vincent Patilio is an inventor who decided that the best way to utilize his genius was to build a giant plush frog suit with electric coils in the boots. Unlike the kangaroo, who relies on his own muscles, Leapfrog uses a powered exoskeleton that allows him to bounce several stories into the air with minimal effort. He ranks higher than the kangaroo because his suit provides armor and mechanical strength that a human body just can't match. On top of that, the suit often features defensive gadgets like an electronic tongue and internal padding that makes him very hard to hurt. He looks like a theme park mascot who had a mental breakdown, but the technology inside that suit is actually quite impressive. He's a walking spring that could crush a car just by landing on it, which is surprisingly dangerous for a guy in flippers. He's probably the only villain who has to worry more about a giant lawnmower than he does about the police. Number 10, Stiltman. Wilbur Day is a man who took hydraulic technology and used it to become the tallest target in the history of Marvel Comics. His suit features telescopic legs that can extend hundreds of feet into the air, allowing him to walk over buildings and peer into high-rise windows. He ranks above Leapfrog because his armor is much more durable and he possesses significant physical mass and reach. While Leapfrog is bouncing around, Stiltman can simply stand in place and swat him out of the air like a bug. He usually carries high-tech weaponry like gas grenades and stun rays, making him a mobile artillery platform that happens to have legs as long as the Nile. Despite being incredibly easy to trip with a piece of wire, his sheer scale and power make him a legitimate heavy hitter in the villain world. It's just a shame he never realized that a staircase is his greatest natural enemy. Number 9, Lady Stiltman. When Callie Ryan decided to take over the Stiltman mantle, she made sure to give the suit a much-needed upgrade for the modern era. While the original Stiltman was clunky and prone to falling over, Callie's version is sleeker, faster, and packed with more advanced weaponry. Her suit utilizes superior technology that offers better balance and more destructive power, which is why I'm ranking her above the original. She is also much more competent as a criminal, often appearing in Spider-Man comics, where she actually poses a decent threat between the jokes. Her ability to maneuver at extreme heights with modernized hydraulics gives her the edge in any battle involving telescopic limbs. She is essentially the version 2.0 that fixed all the bugs, even if the bug of being a giant pair of legs is still fundamentally part of the design. Number 8, Ice Cream. Mutant powers are a roll of the dice. A poor Ice Cream ended up with the ability to turn his entire body into any flavor of ice cream. At first glance, this is a total joke, but molecular control is actually one of the most broken abilities in the superhero world. He ranks above Lady Stiltman because he's essentially immune to physical damage. Can't exactly crush a man who's currently a puddle of vanilla swirl. He can liquefy himself to slip through keyholes, enter mechanical joints to freeze them, or even drown opponents in a delicious frozen treat. While the X-Men mocked him, his ability to reform and reshape his body makes him almost impossible to capture, let alone kill. He's a tactical nightmare who could take down a giant robot just by melting into his motherboard and harding it. Though I'd say he's the only threat on this list that can be defeated by a very hot day or a particularly hungry golden retriever. Number 7, Paste Pot Pete. Peter Petruski is a man who entered the world of crime with a bucket of glue and a name that invited everyone to punch him in the face. Despite the hilarity of being called Paste Pot Pete, his super adhesive paste is one of the most powerful chemical substances in comics. He ranks above Ice Cream because his glue is the perfect counter to a shapeshifter. Once Ice Cream is coated in Pete's paste, he can no longer move or reform. Pete's adhesive is fireproof, stronger than steel, and can trap the strongest heroes in the world in a matter of seconds. He eventually changed his name to the Trapster to gain some respect, but the genius of his chemistry remains his greatest weapon. He's a reminder that a man with a glue gun can be a serious problem if that glue is basically unbreakable. I just think it's hard to be intimidated by a guy whose primary weapon is something you used to eat in kindergarten. Number 6, Hypno Hustler. If you thought disco died in the 70s, you clearly haven't met Antoine Delson, a man who uses the power of funk to commit felonies. The Hypno Hustler wears platform boots and a glittery jumpsuit, but his guitar and backup singers can emit hypnotic frequencies that control anyone who hears them. He ranks above Paste Pot Pete because mind control is a much faster and more effective way to win a fight than a glue gun. Before Pete can even aim his paste, the Hustler has already played a chord that makes Pete believe he's a disco dancer instead of a criminal. He can control entire crowds at once, turning innocent bystanders into a personal army with a single catchy riff. He is a walking musical era that refuses to go away, and his mental influence is a high-tier threat that most people aren't prepared for. That's why I'm calling him the only villain who can rob a bank and make the hostages feel like they had a great night out. Number 5, Dr. Bong. Lester Verde is a man who wears a giant bell on his head and hits it with a metal hand, which sounds like a very loud way to get a headache. However, Dr. Bong is a brilliant scientist who has mastered the art of sonic manipulation and genetic engineering to an incredible degree. He ranks above the Hypno Hustler because his sonic blasts are physically destructive, capable of shattering buildings and liquefying organs with a single bong. He can also use his bell to teleport or create solid sonic constructs, giving him a versatility that a disco guitar just can't match. On top of his bell-themed weaponry, he is a tactical genius who has gone toe-to-toe with some of the weirdest and strongest beings in the universe. He might have a silly name and a clunky helmet, but the raw power of his sound waves is nothing to laugh at. At least, he never has to worry about anyone forgetting his name once he rings his own doorbell. Number 4, Egghead. Elias Starr is a man whose head is shaped exactly like a giant egg, which is a bold choice for a guy trying to be a serious criminal. Despite his goofy appearance, he is one of the smartest men on the planet, possessing a genius-level intellect that rivals the greatest heroes, which I guess might be why his head is big. I'm having my money on him over Dr. Bong because his scientific mastery isn't limited to sound. He builds death rays, robotic armies, and devices that can control ants or manipulate space. He's a master strategist who has led teams of villains and nearly defeated the Avengers on several occasions through pure planning. While Bong has a loud bell, Egghead has a solution for every problem, usually involving a piece of technology that shouldn't exist for another 100 years. He's the ultimate example of a high-tier brain trapped in a low-tier visual design. Number 3, Clock King. William Talkman is a man who is so punctual that he makes a Swiss watch look like it's running late. While he might just be a guy in a suit with a clock on his face, his power is the ability to perceive the timing of everything around him with absolute perfection. He ranks above Egghead because he doesn't need a giant machine to win, he just needs to know exactly when you're going to blink. In a fight, he can predict your movements seconds before you make them, allowing him to dodge bullets and dismantle complex technology with a single tap. He turns the entire world into a predictable rhythm, making him almost impossible to hit in a fair fight. He is a bureaucratic nightmare who uses the laws of physics and timing to turn even the strongest heroes into slow-moving targets. It's a good thing he's a criminal because he would be absolutely insufferable at a surprise birthday party. Number 2, Snowflame. In the 80s, someone decided the most effective way to warn kids about drugs was to create a villain who gets literal powers from snorting cocaine. Snowflame is a drug-fueled zealot who gains super strength, speed, and the ability to produce white-hot flames whenever he indulges in his favorite illegal substance. He's stronger than Claw King because he's a chaotic high-speed powerhouse who doesn't follow any predictable patterns that can be timed. He moves like a blur and feels no pain, making him a manic engine of destruction that can set an entire city block on fire while laughing hysterically. He's a walking disaster who represents the most bizarre intersection of social commentary and comic book logic ever conceived. He is terrifying because he is completely unhinged and possesses the raw physical stats to back up his drug-induced delusions. But you know what I think his weakness is? A very long stay in rehab. Number 1, the Fiddler. It takes a special kind of confidence to show up to a fight with a speedster while wearing a powdered wig and playing a violin. Isaac Brown is a Flash villain who uses his fiddle to channel magic sonic energies that can warp reality, create force fields, and travel between dimensions. He ranks as the strongest on this list because his music bypasses physical stats entirely, allowing him to hypnotize entire cities or shatter mountains with a melody. He has survived encounters with the fastest man alive, using his music to slow them down or trap them in illusions that they can't run away from. His power is essentially magic disguised as music, making him a high-tier threat that can rewrite the rules of the world just by hitting a high note. He is a literal maestro of destruction who proves that the right song can conquer even the most powerful heroes. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.